Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, first of all I'd like to thank the Programme Committee for inviting me to speak here. I suppose in many ways I'm a Philistine, but I'm also interested in going beyond traditional science, as I would call it. And so our group has a number of problems, but one of the problems is global health. We are heading very fast into an abyss with global health in relation to cardiovascular disease, in relation to diabetes, and many other forms of disease, cancers, and it's almost past the point of no return. Now it should, Mr. Chairman, take over in 50 seconds. I'm not sure. Okay.
Shall I go on?
Yes, please. I was saying that back with that. What we are talking about is flavonoids. Our group is concerned with healthy eating, healthy diet. And just as the last speaker was talking about pigments, flavonoids are pigments. They have special structures, for those who are not biochemists, and they have very unique properties. And the curious thing is, they occur almost everywhere in life, both in plant life, animal life, complex human life, and lower organisms. And they are essential. Next slide, please, Mr. Chairman. These are some properties, if I can't turn quickly, but these are some properties. They are plants. They're involved with signaling. They're involved in prevention of attack by microorganisms and viruses. And plants talk to each other. You know, they talk. They have a signaling system which is protected. They're involved in germination and many of the things that you actually can see up there. Most of my slides are pictorial, and so you don't need to read. Next slide, please, Chairman. And in the human, in terms of disease, they're involved with many areas, such as cardiovascular disease, the brain, dental caries, cancer, gastrointestinal cancer. You can see the vast array, and there's broad similarities, and many questions remain unanswered, and that's why I was interested in Dr. Di Corpo's retrocausality, because something is not quite right here. Next slide, please. Something is not quite right. Its occurrence by chance is too obvious. Next slide, please. And this shows the distribution of diseases. And how are we going to bridge this gap between the areas of the world, in fact nearly all areas of the world, who are going downhill fast? There must be messages which are produced which will abate the undesirable elements of the, how can I say, the ugly face of capitalism. I'm a capitalist, I guess, but it's the ugly face of capitalism which is actually ignoring, I think, the health and the well-being of humanity. That's what we want. We don't want in living conditions. I've been, as most of us have been around the world, and looking at slums. What we want is as Dr. Savage mentioned, what do we want in the next 500 million years? Well, we want our generations to have a higher standard of living, a higher understanding of life, so that they may benefit from our mistakes, I was going to say, but perhaps that's true, and our developments. So that's what we want for our children. We've made a hell of a mess of the world in my generation. We've neglected the young, as you can see all over Europe. Next slide, please. And what we want to do is to old lamps for new. We want to actually, right-hand side is what's not good for you, and the top left, top right is death. We want to change the dietary habits of people such that they live in a much better world. Next slide, please. And so, and as other people have mentioned, there's linkages between the brain, the heart, and also the gut, the enteropathic system. It's amazing, nobody mentioned it so far, is that the number of organisms in the gut far exceed, I think, the total number of cells in the human body. And what's more, the biota in the gut are not just biota, they have specific functions of specific levels and specific transverse sections. They're extremely organized. And although I won't mention omega-3 too much, omega fatty acids are very much involved with structural elements of cells and structure. Now, of course, I grew up in a world, and I was educated in a world in physics and mathematics and so on, where people like Singh and Clausius, Boltzmann were rammed down my throat. And they were, then this story became interesting when we had Pauli and Einstein, Schrödinger, and lo and behold, Einstein, who 300 years later made new inroads into the 4 dimensions that we now know. So I was particularly interested in I don't like the word I, so I apologize for that, because I'm not I, I'm a compound of many people. Next slide, please. And so, what we are about, we've got global health right at the top, cosmos. Now, cosmos, the energy, physics, resonance, has already been mentioned. I'm very interested in what Dr. Di Corpo said about resonance, so I'll see that in a moment. And in terms of evolution, although I'm following a traditional path, I'm here on behalf of my colleagues, I'm here to learn. Next slide, please. And of course, it's always mystified me. The great mystery to me, perhaps I'm rather foolish, is that I can explain things to myself in sequence, from one step to another to another. But the step I can't understand is where we move from a chemical structure, if you like, an amorphous mass, to life itself. That really foxes me. So, and that's why at the bottom I said, everything's not clear. I can't know everything, certainly not. The older you get, I know the less. Next slide, please. And so we're back to evolution. I was very keen on evolution, trying to understand what happened. We were very privileged, very, very privileged indeed to be able to look at the universe and to reflect on the universe, to have developed senses which try to understand the representation of the universe. So privileged we are, and just so happens, I can't help it, no, I don't want to help it, I'm a believer. Next slide, please. And of course, somebody else mentioned panspermia. And remember Arrhenius, his work on panspermia. And more recently, people have been developing enzymes. Seelib in the University of Minnesota has been developing enzymes which catalyze reactions and are responsible. So it's easy enough to develop these actual things in test tubes, but organizational life is a different matter. Next, please. And gravity. We often tend, I never ever learned gravity. I learned it in physics, but I never learned it in biology. I mean, you have a little cell that, imagine a little cell and its gravity what happens to it? It's got pressure. If it floats in water, it's easier, it resists gravity, it floats, it's got a buoyancy. So there's a lot to do. Gravity, I think, plays a major role in evolution because of various reasons which I won't go into, but mentioned here. By the way, anybody who asks me for all people attending this conference can have a full copy of all these slides. Next, please, Jim. And of course, time. We're very interested in time. As a chronobiologist, 24 hours a day today, more or less. But in Silurian times, it was a lot less. It might have been only about 21 days. And the curious thing is that when you start looking at biological matter, at cellular levels, even humans and other, you can see echoes of previous times. And up on the top right, you can see a molecule called melatonin, light. And melatonin is extremely important because that is the signaling, that is the master clock. The melatonin is produced in the pineal gland, but light goes through the eye and through a complex to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then produces signals for the synthesis of melatonin. And so our bodies always know what time of day it is. And this is important. And it not only affects, it affects the hypothalamus, it affects all parts. It's like a master clock. And it innervates different parts of the brain. Next, please. I think I'll try and speed up. Next, please. I want you to read that. So the vision is basically evolution is which we try to understand is RNA, the earlier ancestors, and the tree. And on the top left, you can see the strombolites, which were not the earliest forms, but earliest forms, I guess, found in Adelaide. Next slide, please. So, but the important thing is we believe the sun is responsible for imprinting its radiation, its cosmic energy into organic life. And what we're, those pictures up there are self-explanatory. You can see a coronal ejection mass there, and you can see the size of the Earth. And you can see a sunspot there, which is about 10 times the size of the Earth. And you can see the aurora borealis in the northern hemisphere. And you can map the effect of the solar winds and the magnetic fields from the sun. Next, please. We think this is all vitally important. I mean, if you look around the world, in Minneapolis, in Moscow, and I think years ago I've seen some papers from Italy, we can see is an increase in myocardial infarction when you have these magnetic vectors arising from the interaction of solar winds with the Earth's magnetic field. Next, please. And there's an example just of a sunspot cycle, as you can see, going through time. Next, please. And it's always fascinated me. I talk about flavonoids, and we talk about magnetism and electromagnetic influence. But what about the birds, the butterflies? What about nature? They all seem to have similar things. Proteins with metals, and metals which orientate themselves in the magnetic field. You know, when the poles switch, for those of you who have done geology, you'll know that, or not done geology, but the poles switch from time to time. North becomes south and south becomes north. And bacteria also have bacterial tails, and they have iron proteins. And so it's always fascinated me, why is everything so generally similar? And this is why I think about this retro-causality. Because that sounds attractive, and I don't want to jump on a bandwagon, but it does seem there's more than an element of plausibility in what was said, and what the chairman had said, whatever day it was yesterday. And this is the resonance curves. He showed resonance here behind you. He showed a syntropy, entropy, and this shows the effect of magnetic fields on tissue, on resonance, which might lead to the interaction with DNA and actually resonate, and the result is possible myocardial infarction. Next, please. So, in an ideal society, what do we actually want? We want this, the omega point you can see up there. We want an idyllic society, because Dr. Savage mentioned this. He didn't use the word idyllic, I don't think, but he asked what we want. And of course, we have great potential in humans, the cup of cornucopia, all the good things, the developments, but we also have the base of the device here: war, pestilence, greed, ugly face of capitalism, etc., etc. And that's one thing. And I feel very often, as we go around the world, we're very much like Thesis. We carry rocks in Hades, and then only to roll them down the hill again and start off. So, next slide, please. I won't dwell on that. Now, it's amazing when you look in three-dimensional, how these enzymes have developed, how these flavonoids, for example, have enzyme systems in other forms of life. The fly has 60% or thereabouts of our genetic coding. And if you look at microorganisms, and the same as some of ours, you'll see similar enzyme systems in lower organisms, and these are just, next slide please, I can't remember exactly what, next slide please. Yeah, so this is some, there's not our work, this came from Dallas. I had good fortune of having these slides from a meeting I attended to. And of course, flavonoids are involved in some of these enzyme systems which will allow respiration. Next, please. Now, what are flavonoids? I haven't mentioned it, but I shouldn't presume you know what they are. But those are the sort of structures I'm actually talking about, and they often resemble steroids. Next slide, don't remember it. And this is some work. This is where they're found. You can see the list of flavonoids there. Some are not quite flavonoids, but you can see that we advocate going back to the hunter-gatherer, to the Palæolithic man, so that their diet might be the ones which we should be actually, in a sense, at a basic level, following. Because our genes have changed very, very little since Palæolithic man and today. Only about, I can't remember, about 0.05%. What has changed is the control mechanisms, the epigenetics. Because we've had a pile of junk landed on us in the last century, and our body has had to cope somehow. And it's the control mechanisms which are actually failing. Next, please. So this is the idea of going back to Palæolithic man and a good healthy diet, whereby we hope to reduce, we'll never eliminate, but reduce, well not never, but we will reduce the scourge of many diseases on our planet today. Thank you. Next, please.
So I have a problem here. I don't know why it's stopped.
Okay. Chairman, it's close to lunchtime.
Yes.
And if I don't get shot, or you might say hip hip hooray, I don't know which, the slides were given to people.
Yes.
And anyone over here who wants the slides can have them gratefully. Just send me an email and you'll have them by return of email. And there's a lot more I think I had on the slides. But what we're showing is we've got to look towards the cosmos for answers. We've got to look for, I'm extremely interested in in the negative, not the negative, the negative, mathematical negative part of Einstein's equation, which I never knew of, and I have done cosmology, and I've worked on some of these mathematical equations, and I never knew of that. Anyway, I will close by saying we have a serious problem on the planet, and that is having global health, because diet. We believe that diet will lead to good physical health and, of course, the most important, good mental health. And if we combine all those things, we move a step along the road to the 500 million year road for better health for all, and hopefully towards the omega point. Thank you very much.
Am I right that flavonoids aren't made in the body, but they have they're involved in an enormous number of reactions?
Well, they are involved with an enormous number of reactions, and I'm thinking of plants first of all. They're certainly made in photosynthesis in plants. They are in the diet. The flavonoids are in the diet. They aren't produced in the body. They are produced metabolically in the body. I would have to say I don't, if I was to go back far enough, I'm not sure, because nearly everything we consume is flavonoids. You can't eat hardly anything without consuming flavonoids. So I don't know the exact starting point in the human body, but like most things, they are metabolized, and they are synthesized, but whether they're synthesized de novo, originally, I don't know. I haven't given that any thought.
But it's wonderful. I like the breadth of your thoughts. Ulysses talks about the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. Are you suggesting then in the middle we can have the Big Life?
I tend to think that I was sat here thinking of Newton and 300 years to Einstein, and then heard for the first time in this meeting about the alternative solutions to Einstein's equation, and I'm mindful not to be deceived. Because 300 years, it went from Newton to Einstein, or just before Einstein. Now we have another couple of decades, and it's a long time to start talking about the Big Crunch. And I've got a feeling that life is progressive, science is progressive, but when we look at the standard form of our cosmology equations, they're built on about 4% of the observable universe. There's another 96% out there. We elegantly and scientifically address the issues, but it's only on a standard model which does not include, as far as I know, gravity. And so we're only operating on a little bit of information. What about all the dark matter out there? What about, for example, the mechanisms of the black holes? Now, black holes suck in clouds, stellar clouds, and they disappear. Then they also spew out vast amounts of X-ray radiation. So there's a dynamic here. A dynamic which is good. It's not quite answering your question, but what I'm trying to say is, when we talk about the Big Crunch, I think that's just an idea, and I think there's a lot to be learned from the cosmos as we get better and better technologically, and of course the very matter that the chairman's eye is rubbing his eye, but that probably came from a black hole. It might have passed many times through the black hole. The material, of course, which the eye is made of, and the elements, we are here. We may have gone into black holes and out of black holes. I'm not talking about Star Trek now. I'm talking about the dynamics that might exist in the cosmos, where and of course we really don't know about the Big Crunch, and once again, can't answer the question. I don't know.
Someone else? Yes.
Regarding the gut flora, do you have any suggestions on how to improve or?
Yeah. Well, there's an awful lot of things in the digester. A lot of enzymes as you go down. They don't change. They change. Sorry, they do change because they have as you go down the gut. They have different functions. Also, there's different enzymes operating as you go down the gut. The cell cycle, 24-hour cell cycle, changes its timing. As you go, the work of Larry Scabing from Little Rock, the late Larry Scabing, as you go down the gut, it changes its character and of course timing. And also the fluidity of the digester being where fibre is important, because fibre can hold in moisture. If it's moist, you get more rapid transfer of sugars. And one of the co-authors on this paper, Toru Takahashi from Japan, actually works on the mechanism of fibre and how it might adversely or improve the medical situation with respect to diabetes. Because if it's fluid, you get sugars cleaved, uptake of sugars, which is not desirable. But if you have a high fibre diet, you hold that in as you go down. And the other thing is, of course, is not just the diet. If you've got an enteropathic circulation, and so if the digester is loose, you lose estrogens, because estrogens go back into the digestion and are excreted out. But if it's, is that right? No, it's the other way around. If they're solid, they're held and they go out. Otherwise, they get recirculated. So if you've got recycled estrogens, that means the breast, for example, might be exposed to more estrogens, which improve in the risk of breast cancer. Or if flavonoids have anti-cancer properties, and so they will block the natural action of tamoxifen and similar things. They are phytoestrogens, and therefore they will act like tamoxifen, so they'll improve the health. And they'll also improve the health in prostate. They also affect, we believe, the development of maleness and femaleness in not so much male and female, but the femaleness and maleness of individuals at puberty. There's another switch as you go towards puberty. And that is important. So it depends how you turn out to be, how you feel about your gender, etc., etc. And that starts in the womb, and it starts in transgenesis, right in the fetus. Is what the man eats, the father eats, or even the grandfather eats, and the mother eats, because that goes into the womb, is in the sperm. It also goes into the womb, and the fetus is under stress. It's exposed to all these bad things, noxious things, and they have a major problem. And people look for prostate cancer and breast cancer in the elderly, but the risk factors are probably mainly or significantly largely in the developing fetus. Although it's not a genetic disease, it is a stress caused by toxic materials which are taken out. Sorry, I wandered off a bit of the question, but I hope I've answered this part of it.
Someone else? No. Okay.
Thank you, Douglas.